Have you ever heard your own voice when you know for certain you weren't speaking? What I'm about to tell you happened to me 3 years ago, and to this day, I still don't have all the answers. But I need to share this story because maybe, just maybe, someone out there has experienced something similar. This is a true story. Names and some locations have been changed for privacy, but everything else happened exactly as I'm about to tell you. If you're easily disturbed, viewer discretion is advised. Let's begin. My name is David, and I'm a 32-year-old architect from Boston. In the summer of 2021, I inherited my grandmother's old farmhouse in rural Vermont. She had passed away at the age of 89, peacefully in her sleep. Growing up, I'd visited that house maybe 5 or 6 times. It was a beautiful property, 3 acres of land, surrounded by dense woods, with a charming 2-story colonial house that dated back to the 1890s. But there was one thing about that property that always made me uncomfortable as a child: the old stone well in the backyard. It sat about 50 feet behind the house, partially hidden by overgrown bushes and wild grass. The well had been sealed decades ago with a heavy wooden cover and rusted metal chains. My grandmother always told us kids to stay away from it. "That well is dangerous," she'd say. "It's deep, and the stones are crumbling. Don't go near it." As a kid, I listened. But there was something about the way she said it, something in her eyes that suggested there was more to the story than just safety concerns. After her funeral, I decided to spend a few weeks at the farmhouse, cleaning it out and deciding whether to sell or renovate. I'm not married, no kids, and I had just finished a major project at work, so the timing seemed perfect for a quiet retreat. I arrived on a Sunday afternoon in late July. The house was exactly as I remembered it, a bit dusty, filled with antique furniture and the smell of old books. It felt peaceful. Almost too peaceful. That first night, I made dinner, unpacked my things, and sat on the back porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. That's when I noticed it. The old well. Even with all the overgrowth, I could see the weathered wooden cover, still held down by those rusted chains. In the fading light, it looked almost ominous. I made a mental note to check it out the next day, maybe reinforce the cover or fill it in completely. After all, I couldn't have that liability if I decided to sell the property. I had no idea the decision would change everything. That night, I slept in my grandmother's old bedroom on the 2nd floor. The window faced the backyard, though thick curtains blocked most of the view. I'm usually a heavy sleeper, but around 2:30 a.m., something woke me up. At first, I thought it was just the unfamiliar sounds of an old house, creaking floorboards, settling foundations, the wind in the trees. I lay there in the darkness, listening. And then I heard it. A voice. Faint, distant, coming from outside. It was calling a name. David. David. My blood went cold. It was my voice. Not similar to my voice. Not someone who sounded like me. It was my voice, the exact tone, the exact inflection, even the slight rasp I have from years of coffee and occasional cigars. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. For a moment, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a dream bleeding into waking consciousness. Maybe it was the wind creating an auditory illusion. But then I heard it again. "David, come here. David." It was coming from the direction of the backyard. From the well. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to stay in bed, lock the door, and wait until morning. But there's something deeply unsettling about hearing your own voice when you know you're not speaking. It creates a cognitive dissonance that's almost impossible to ignore. I got out of bed, walked to the window, and pulled back the curtain. The backyard was bathed in moonlight. I could see the outline of the well, the overgrown grass swaying gently in the breeze. And then, for just a moment, I thought I saw something. A figure. Standing next to the well. But when I blinked, it was gone. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only a few minutes. The voice didn't come again. Eventually, I convinced myself it was exhaustion, stress from the funeral, maybe even grief manifesting in strange ways. I went back to bed. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, I did what any reasonable person would do in the age of information. I Googled hearing your own voice when alone, auditory hallucinations, grief and psychological symptoms. I found articles about stress-induced hallucinations, sleep paralysis, even carbon monoxide poisoning. I checked the house's CO detectors, all functioning normally. But I also found something else. Local Vermont folklore about echo wells that were said to capture sounds and voices, playing them back at strange times. Most of it was superstitious nonsense, stories told to scare children. Still, I couldn't shake the memory of that voice. After breakfast, I decided to inspect the well properly. I grabbed some tools from the garage and walked across the dewy grass to the backyard. Up close, the well looked even older than I remembered. The stone walls were indeed crumbling in places, and the wooden cover was warped and weathered. But those chains were still solid, locked tight with an old padlock that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. I walked around the well, examining it from all angles. That's when I noticed something carved into one of the stones near the base. Letters. Worn smooth by time and weather, but still visible. Speak not to the deep. A chill ran down my spine. I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Then I noticed something else, fresh scratches on the wooden cover. Like someone, or something, had been trying to get out. Or get in. That's when I heard my grandmother's voice in my memory, "Don't go near it. Not it's dangerous this time. Just don't go near it." I decided right then that I needed to find out more about this well. My grandmother had lived here for over 60 years. She must have known something. I spent the rest of the day going through her belongings, looking for diaries, letters, anything that might explain the warning carved into the stone. In the attic, I found a small wooden box containing old photographs and a leather-bound journal from 1962. What I read in that journal made everything worse. My grandmother's journal from 1962 was mostly mundane daily life, recipes, mentions of my grandfather and their young children. But there was one entry, dated October 14th, that stopped me cold. The well called to Samuel again last night. I heard his voice in the darkness, coming from outside. But Samuel was right beside me in bed, sleeping soundly. I woke him and made him listen. He heard it too, his own voice, calling from the backyard. He wanted to go investigate, but I held him back. My mother warned me about this well when we bought this property. She said it had been here long before the house, built by settlers who didn't understand what they were doing. Some places, she said, are thin between our world and something else. The well is one of those places. It echoes more than just sound. It echoes possibility. Echoes of what could be, what might have been, what shouldn't be. We're having it sealed tomorrow. I pray that will be enough. The next entry was dated 2 weeks later. The well is sealed. We've placed chains and blessed the cover. The pastor said prayers over it, though he seemed skeptical. Samuel hasn't heard his voice since. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear something down there. Not calling anymore. Just waiting. That was the last mention of the well in her journal. I sat in the attic as the sun set, processing what I'd read. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as superstition, the fearful thinking of a different era. But I had heard my own voice. And it was calling from that well. As darkness fell, I made a decision. I would reinforce the seal, maybe even fill in the well completely. First thing tomorrow, I'd call a contractor. But I had to make it through one more night. A night that would test everything I thought I knew about reality. Before nightfall, I made one more discovery that would piece together the horrifying truth about the well. I decided to visit the local historical society in town, a small building on Main Street run by an elderly woman named Martha. She had lived in the area her entire life and knew every story, every legend, every dark corner of local history. When I mentioned my grandmother's property and the old well, her expression changed immediately. "Oh," she said quietly, "you inherited the Whitmore place." She led me to a back room filled with old newspaper clippings and town records. What she showed me made my hands shake. In 1847, a family named Hutchinson had built the first structure on that land, not a house, but a small settlement. They dug the well that same year, going down nearly 80 feet until they hit water. But according to the town records, 3 members of the Hutchinson family disappeared within 6 months of completing the well. The last entry in the family's Bible, preserved in the Historical Society's collection, simply read, "It speaks with our tongues. It knows our voices. God forgive us for digging so deep." The property was abandoned for 15 years. When new settlers tried to build there in 1862, 2 more people vanished. The well was sealed for the first time in 1863. But here's what disturbed me most. Martha showed me a map of the area from 1840, before any European settlement. The indigenous peoples who had lived there for centuries had marked that specific spot with a symbol. When I asked what it meant, Martha's answer chilled me to the bone. It means the place where echoes are born. According to the oral histories we've collected, the native tribes believed certain locations were doorways, not to another physical place, but to the realm of possibilities. Every choice we don't make, every path we don't take, every version of ourselves we don't become, they believe those things exist somewhere. And in certain thin places, those other possibilities can reach through, can call out, can try to replace us. She looked at me seriously. "Your grandmother was smart to keep it sealed. That well doesn't just echo sound, David. It echoes existence itself." I thanked Martha and drove back to the farmhouse in silence, her words echoing in my mind. Echoes of possibility. Other versions of ourselves, calling out from paths not taken. What if there was a reality where I had fallen into that well? Where I was trapped down there in the darkness, desperate for rescue? And what if that version of me had found a way to reach across the boundary, to call out to this version of me, hoping to, what? Trade places? Pull me in? The thought was almost too terrifying to contemplate. But that night, I would learn that the truth was somehow even worse. I was determined to stay awake that second night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, my laptop open, trying to distract myself with work. But at exactly 2:30 a.m., the same time as the night before, I heard it again. "David." My own voice, clearer this time, more insistent. "David. I need help, please." The way it said please, with exactly the desperation I would use if I were truly in trouble, made my chest tighten. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Against every horror movie instinct I've ever developed, I walked to the back door. I had to know. I stepped outside into the cool night air. The moon was full, casting long shadows across the yard. The well sat there, unchanged, the wooden cover still sealed tight. "David. I'm down here, help me." The voice was definitely coming from the well. I approached slowly, my hands shaking. When I got close enough, I shone my light on the wooden cover. And I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was condensation on the inside of the chains. Like breath. Like someone breathing from inside the well. "Please. David, it's so dark down here." That voice of my voice sounded terrified. And then I realized something that changed everything. It wasn't calling to me. It was calling for me. It was mimicking what I would sound like if I were trapped down there. Learning. Adapting. Trying to create a scenario where someone, maybe me, maybe a future owner, would feel compelled to open the well. To let something out. Or to fall in. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off that sealed cover. "David? Where are you going? Don't leave me." The voice was getting frustrated now, losing some of its perfection, taking on an edge that wasn't quite human. And then it said something that stopped me in my tracks. "I know what you did, David. I know about the accident. I know about Sarah. Sarah was my college girlfriend. We'd been in a car accident 12 years ago. I was driving. She survived, but our relationship didn't. It was something I'd never told my grandmother. Something nobody in Vermont would know about. But a version of me trapped in an alternate reality? A version of me who had lived through the same experiences, made the same mistakes? That version would know. You can't hide from your own voice, David. You can't run from yourself. I ran back to the house, locked every door and window, and spent the rest of the night in my car in the driveway with the engine running. The next morning, I called a contractor. By that afternoon, they had poured 6 feet of concrete into that well, sealing it permanently. I hired someone to build a small shed over the spot. Nothing would ever access that well again. But before they sealed it, I did one thing I probably shouldn't have. I spoke into the well. I said, "I'm sorry you're trapped there. I'm sorry for whatever choice led to that version of events. But this is my reality, and I'm staying in it." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, faintly, I heard my voice one last time. Not angry. Not desperate. Just sad. I understand. I would have done the same thing. Then nothing. Just the echo of my words bouncing off the stone walls as the concrete began to pour. I sold the property 2 months later. I never told the buyers about what happened. Maybe I should have, but who would believe me? To this day, I don't know what was down there. Maybe Martha was right about thin places and alternate realities. Maybe it was something else entirely, something that feeds on possibility, on the roads not taken, on the infinite variations of who we might have been. What I do know is this: we make thousands of choices in our lives. Each one creates a branching path, a different version of our story. Most of the time, those other paths fade away, becoming nothing more than what-ifs that we ponder late at night. But sometimes, in certain places where the boundary between realities grows thin, those other versions don't fade. They linger. They wait. They call out. And they sound exactly like us. I don't have nightmares about it anymore. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I'll hear a sound, a creak, a whisper, the wind, and for just a moment, I'll wonder if it's my voice, calling from somewhere I can't see. If you ever encounter something like this, a place that doesn't feel right, that echoes things it shouldn't, trust your instincts. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some wells are sealed for a reason. And if you ever hear your own voice calling from somewhere impossible, don't answer. Because that version of you made different choices. They took a different path. And no matter how much they sound like you, no matter how well they know you, they're not you. And they want to be. Thank you for watching. If you've experienced anything similar, or if you have information about thin places or echo wells, please share in the comments below. Your stories matter, and you're not alone. And please, hit the subscribe button. Your support helps me continue sharing these unexplained experiences. Stay safe out there. And remember, not every voice that knows your name deserves an answer.